We looked in part 6 at adding Google Tag Manager and setting that up and using that to be able to link to our Google Analytics account. So in this episode, what we're going to be looking at is using Google Tag Manager to track events. So events are basically user interactions with the content that we can measure independently from a web page, visit, or a screen load. So let's go ahead and look at how we can use Google Tag Manager to track specific events on our website.
In the behavior section, we have an area that is called events. So if we go to the events area, we've got an overview, but we don't see any data. So what we can do is we can use Google Tag Manager, which hopefully you followed along in part 6, I believe, and that is talking about how we set up Google Tag Manager. And now we can start looking at, well, why else might we use Google Tag Manager? So we've set it up and we've added our tracking code for Google Analytics, and you might have added tracking code for other things such as Click Dimensions or Dynamics 365 marketing. But what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how we can create variables and triggers and tags to assist in being able to track interactions that people have on our website. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to set up an event that is when someone clicks on a link that is an outbound link. So an outbound link is going to be a link to another website, another domain. So what I'm doing here is I'm in the Google Analytics account for a podcast that I do with my good friend Lisa Crosby from Australia. And we do a podcast called The Up Podcast. So it's got a website and I'm tracking the analytics for it. For each episode, we have a series of links to things that we talk about in the podcast, and we put those in the show notes. So let's go ahead and have a section where we can actually track that in terms of the analytics. So we're going to go into Google Tag Manager. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable. So this variable, so let's go ahead and we'll click on new because we want a user-defined variable. So we're going to have this variable set as an auto event variable. So we're going to go ahead and scroll, and there it is, auto event variable. Now the variable type we're going to pick is the element URL. So it's basically when somebody clicks on a specific URL, and the component type we want is outbounds. That's already there for us as one of the system ones or the default ones that we can choose. Then we're going to go ahead and save it, and I'm going to call this outbound links. Let's go ahead and just click save. All right, so now we've got that. We need to then set up a trigger. So what's going to trigger that? So I'm going to go ahead and click on new. We're going to add a new variable. And again, we've got different types that are set up already, sort of these system ones. And what I want to do is I want to go into the click area and I want just links. Now what we need to do is we need to make sure that this trigger is only going to fire on certain things. So I don't want it to fire on all links that are clicked, because we might click on links in between the website. So it might be a link from one page to another page within the website. So we want some links that are clicked. And what we want is we want to use that variable, the outbound links, equals true. So we set up the trigger. So again, we're going to save this trigger and I'm going to call this, again, I'm just going to call it the same thing because then it's obvious that the variable and the trigger and the tags, they all sort of fit together. So then we're going to go ahead and save that. And finally, we need to go ahead and add a new tag. So let's go to the tags and we'll click new. And for this, we need the tag type to be Google Analytics Universal Analytics. So that's what we're doing. We're basically having this tied to our analytics account. So we've gone ahead and we've selected that. Now, instead of being based on tracking page views, I want to go ahead and track this as an event. So the category, what I can do is I've got the option here to click and actually add something from a variable. But the category, I want to have it as an outbound link. I want to see that in the list of events so I know that that is an outbound link click that has happened. I'm just going to call this outbound links. Now, what we'll see within Google Analytics is we'll see an action and we'll see a label. Now, you can use different things to show the action and the label, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, the action is that they clicked on the URL, so I want to know what URL it was that they clicked on. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then the label is also something that will show up. I could do the click text. So what was it that they clicked on? So let's go ahead and select that. Now the value, this isn't necessarily anything that we're going to see within our reports in the event area. You could put something in there, or we can just leave it blank. Non-interaction hit, I'm going to go ahead and change that to true. And then finally, we need to tie it to our Google Analytics account. So I'm going to go ahead and select that's a variable that we set up when we set up Google Tag Manager. Finally, we need to tie our tag to a trigger. And the trigger we're going to tie it to is that outbound links trigger that we set up. And again, we're going to go ahead and save this. And I'm just going to call it the same thing. I'm going to call it outbound links. And we're going to go ahead and save this. And as with everything, we're going to go ahead and we're going to submit this. And I'm going to just say adding outbound links info. And then I can say setting up a variable, a trigger, and a tag to track the outbound links from the Up Podcast website. And then I'm going to go ahead and publish it. Okay, so we've published that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually open up the website and just click on some links so that we can then actually see some of that traffic being captured as an event. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and we'll come back to this so we can actually see how it will appear in Google Analytics. Okay, so now we've come back. And one thing to keep in mind, if you are trying to test this out for yourself, if you followed along in part 2 and you added in a filter to exclude the traffic from your home IP address, you're either going to need to disable that filter and then go ahead and click on things, or if you use some kind of VPN service, then you should be able to connect to the VPN and then go ahead and click so that it doesn't show that it's coming from your own home IP address. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now if we come to the events area, you'll see that we have the event category. So that is our top level. Now the event category, all we've got set up for this in this Google Analytics account is the outbound links category. However, on my own website, I've got multiple different categories that are set up. So you'll see those categories listed. So now if we go ahead and click on the outbound links category, it will drill in further and we can see, okay, well, we've got the category of outbound links and there were 5 total events within that category. So then what we could do is we go ahead and we could say, okay, well, instead of showing the event category, let's show the event label. So this is the label, meaning what is it that was on the web page that somebody clicked on? What did it say? What was the text? So if I go to the podcast and let's go ahead and let's go into the episodes and we'll look at episode 1. And what we see is there's a link, Power Apps Licensing Explained in 7 Minutes. That's Lisa Crosby's YouTube video. And further down we have Benitez here, and further down we have Ryan McLean's website, and then GuineaCube, whatever it might be. Whatever was clicked on, that's what we're seeing in terms of the label. Now what we can also do is we can add in a secondary dimension. So I could put in the event action. So now we're seeing, okay, well, that's what the label was, and what was the action? What was the link that was actually clicked on? So by setting this up, this really is going to give us some insight into knowing which of the links that we've shared on the different episodes, which of those are going to be popular, or which are popular. What is it that's resonating with people to where they're then going ahead and clicking on it? So this is a fantastic way to be able to track those outbound links. So if you haven't already started looking into Google Tag Manager, then this is a great next thing to kind of set up and go ahead and test. And I would suggest the outbound links one is certainly something you want to set up within your Google Analytics and your Google Tag Manager.
Hi, I'm Megan Walker. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something from it. If you don't want to miss out on any other content, you can go ahead and click on my face below to subscribe. And if you want to watch the next video, you can do that by clicking over here and go ahead and get started. Thanks again.